right, welcome to part 4, and this is where, after all of the preparations of the Postgres database, Vertica database, nodes, NFS server, prerequisite packages, and everything else, we actually get to the CDF deployment itself. So here I have everything fired up. I'm still using just a single worker. I did not replicate it yet. And I'm actually going to deploy on a single worker to see if it works. If it works, I'll replicate the candidate or the template snapshot that I have over here into 3 additional workers and attach them with a command line to the cluster. I find that it's much easier to do using a command line rather than trying and work with the thing with some JSON files. I hope the new GUI or the new installation with the UI actually solves this problem, kind of puts us into the past where we had the graphical interface for CDF deployment, but we'll have to see. So this is where we are right now. We are on the install.properties file configuration, and we're going to do some things that are pretty standard, like changing the default Docker settings, and specifically to my environment, changing the networking settings a little bit so the address space would not overlap with the actual environment that hosts it. Okay, so we reconnect to our master. There is no need to connect to worker and NFS at the moment. And I'm going to the CDF installation directory, and I need to modify the install properties. So it's going to be nano. Some of you ask, why am I using nano? And well, the reason is, as you see, my changes are very occasional. And for occasional changes, there's just less things for me to know and to teach actually to my students when I need to operate the environment, right? So here I have this thing already covered kind of in my previous lessons that I taught, right? So I'm just going to set the Docker proxy to this. I already have just, why not use the copy paste? But basically, HTTP and HTTPS proxy are both supposed to be pointing to the HTTP address over here, as you see, right? Although it says the HTTPS, you should not add HTTPS here because, well, obviously your proxy should be configured to respond to both of those ports, right? So definitely a thing to consider. And the Docker no proxy would be, I'm not even sure that we need to have no proxy. Let's see what okay, so this is the syntax. So I'm going to exclude the ops_b as wdemos.net, comma, and then as wdemos.net. Probably we should not be using proxy for localhost, if I remember correctly, the demands. Yeah, there were some demands in that thing. I remember that one. Is there like a doc that refers to this specifically? Let me read from it. Don't want to make mistakes because later during the installation, it kind of, yeah, you see this one. This is what's missing. It's going to read it and complain if those things do not exist, although they're not really that important, but still. Okay, so this is the Docker node proxy. Now there is the pod and service CIDR that I need to configure. So my address space is 172.16. Which is, I mean, if you're using AWS in United States, probably you will notice that it is a pretty common thing. And unfortunately, the default overlaps, as you see right here, right? The pod CIDR, it says 172.16. And if a couple of years ago this wasn't a problem, now it kind of overlaps and it doesn't like to be in the same address space, so I'm just going to say 20. Although I usually say 17 or something like that, but that's not all. Okay, so we have the service CIDR 172.17, so now there is no overlap between those two. Let me continue reading. So there is the service CIDR, AWS, cloud provider. All of those are not important. Not important, not important. I think I am done with this thing. Let's see. What did I do? Okay. Right. Docker. So is optional, specifies the CDF capabilities. Okay, monitoring, load deployment management. Okay, so this is all good. Org name is right. Load balancer. Set FQDN in ingress. Okay, CDF home. So it's all going to be used. It's all going to be used on defaults. Okay, there is no need to do this. Simple device, direct LVM device, no need, no need. kubedns hosts, no need to read that one. Fluent D log receiver URL, I have no idea what to do with those. Everything should be kept on defaults. Pod CIDR, that's good. Service CIDR, we change the pod CIDR, AWS region. Okay. Create and configure config.json file. This topic contains legacy items that are not fully removed, instances of master topic referring to core term, control plane, and control plane nodes. You must first create a config.json file. The file contains all the necessary parameters for the CDF installation script. As the configuration contains sensitive data such as password, make sure this file is fully protected from any unauthorized access. Okay. Create a config.json. So I guess I'm configuring it from scratch. Okay, so we have this multi-master deployment template, but we have single master deployment with embedded PostgreSQL. For a single master deployment with multiple and external. Okay, so we are going to replicate this. Oh, why do we have two examples? Example one, all of master workers, worker nodes, and then we're going to specify just one worker node. License agreement, connection, volumes, and FS with an address and a database. Why this thing has a core CDF log, so why the examples differ so. Okay, so this one has much more volumes. Item logging volume and external Postgres. So we have type NFS volume, and this one has the database. The master node. Master node is local. When you see this, it's kind of without specifications between those brackets, like here, means that the master node is local, so there are no additional master nodes beyond the one that runs the script. Then we have worker nodes, and then we have all of those examples. So I guess we'll take example number 2 because it specifies many more volumes, I guess, and we'll keep it at that. Okay, so it's config.json, and I'm actually going to use Notepad for that. And we will save this file. We'll say yes. And do we have config.json here? No, we do not. So I'm going to say nano config.json. and just keep it open for now. And probably, okay, so this is my config.json from before, right? So we have the worker, license agreement, volumes configured, and no database, no database. So I guess we can play with this one, right? This is the config.json. And language JSON language. Okay, database, CDF API, DB name, okay. And it's actually going to be CDF dot opsb.swdemos.net. Of course, I'm going to modify the passwords off screen. And so it's going to be prod pass. This one going to be prod pass, so I'm going to replace it later with a search. Master nodes, we have this, and worker nodes, we will have only one. Worker. I'm not the only one to do those mistakes. Worker1 .opsb.swdemos.net. Password 123. I'm going to replace it later. Skip resource check true. Simple device. Okay. Standard user skip warning true. Device. Okay. So we need to delete this one. Right. Like this. Okay. And I guess this doesn't break it. Right. So this is the closing and okay. So basically this that closes the master worker, and this is the same thing. Now for the volumes, we are actually going to Control H it, and we're going to say nfs.opsb.swdemos.net, replace all. Yeah. And that's about it. Now, external host name, this one is going to be master. So it's going to be master, not mother, master dot opsb.swdemos.net. Okay, so let's recap real fast before I switch to off screen to change the passwords. But basically, we defined the database connectivity, which would signify to the installer, to the installation, that it goes to the external Postgres. And then it says, well, there is only one master node, which also runs the installation script. So it means that there are no extra parameters beyond just mentioning it. And there is only one worker node in the moment. I hope it wouldn't yell at me that it's not enough. Actually, there is a way to install without worker nodes. You just delete the whole thing and then add worker nodes later with a CLI. And if this fails on the first attempt, probably I'm going to ignore it and just remove the whole thing, just out of convenience. Then we have the volume specified. I have no idea why the original or not, well, the samples actually include only one of the volumes instead of four like here, but I also know that previously it worked without, so maybe I'm doing an overkill over here. I'm not really sure. We'll have to figure that one out. Okay. And that's about it. And then, of course, the connection, accept the license user agreement, call home. I have no idea what call home means, but I'm going to take it and I'm going to run with it. So I'm going to paste the whole thing right here. Oh, sorry. And that's going to be basically everything that I need to do. Right. So definitely this is where I will leave it and see you after I edit the file in a second. Okay, so let's try and run it, I guess. What would be configure the config JSON, did it all. Run pre-check script before you install CDF. Test run the nodes. Well, it's going to be kind of still the same thing. I mean, when you run it, it just runs. Okay, so all of this, let's try a pre-check. It's in the scripts, right? So cd scripts and then pre-check. Let's see, pass disabled, warning, failed. Checking range around with false CIDR. So it's based on the default values and not on the values that exist in the install properties. And we did change it, so that's completely fine with me. And yeah, it's go good. So let's go one level above. Let's go to our documentation over here and create an agent metric collector. We're not going to, what if you're using classic OBM? I'm not going to use agent collector metric. I'm going to use something else. Okay, install CDF. So there is this session install when I specify the NFS server, although we already kind of specified it. And then NFS directory, where NFS directory is the item vol claim. So it's going to be /core in this example. Then a configuration JSON file, which already includes those settings, but who cares, right? And then that's okay, DB passwords, TF API, DB user. Okay. Run the following command to initialize. Okay, so first we do the install and then we do everything else. So I'm not going to specify extra settings over here, just those. So let's start replacing, and it's going to be config JSON, and NFS directory is going to be var vols core. All right, it's going to be var vols item /core as the doctor prescribed, and NFS server is going to be with a full FQDN. So it's going to be nfs.opsb.swdemos.net, and fingers crossed. Let's see. Oh! Objects must consist of key value pairs and line 28, column 2, line and 28, column 2. So I'm going to see the line 28 and fix it in the config JSON. Okay, and after fixing it, the syntax is okay. And now it says, well, you are setting ICDF with embedded Postgres database, which is completely not true. We specify the database in the config JSON, but it doesn't read it. So, if it insists, I'll just comply. Okay, so we're going to be DB URL, and DB URL, according to their example, is going to be, what is the DB URL? If you configure an external Oracle, DB URL must be JDBC Oracle. I have no idea. I don't know what it means. Okay. So CDF API DB user, DB password, DB URL, DB CRT, skip warning. Okay, CDF uses the CDI DB database for the CDI service. Specify the database connection details for your external PostgreSQL. Not the database connection if you use an embedded PostgreSQL, but it doesn't mean anything. JDBC, PostgreSQL, my database. Okay, here are the examples that we wanted to have. Okay, so DB URL, and we don't have DBCRT because we opted out of it. So I'm going to add the examples that I have here into my command, and actually it's going to be CDF db.opsb.swdemos.net. I thought that, considering that we're doing the GUI way, we're going to reduce the amount of manual steps on the servers. However, it's not the case, right? So DB password and DB user. So let me set the password real quick. And now it runs, and what it says: cannot mount NFS, observatory swdemos.net, CDF log. There is an invalid volume. Okay, invalid volume. So that is an interesting one. So what you've missed is that it asked me, well, you connected to a database without TLS, or you would want to confirm? And I say, yeah. Okay, so we have CDF log, we have item log, and it's not part of the NFS setup, right? So we're going to list the variables item, and then what did it ask us for? What was the example? Var item CDF log. There is no CDF log. Okay, well, I'm going to remove it from the JSON then. I don't need it. So real quick, let's edit the JSON, and let's rerun the installation command. Go for it. Are you sure I want to continue? Yes. And item logging wall is mandatory. Item logging volume, what did I delete? I have no idea. All right, so what happened is that during the initial JSON that we had, the example here, actually had a mistake in it. And it specified that the item logging wall that is created as item logging wall with this name actually referred to as CDF log, which is not correct. It should be item logging wall here and item logging wall here. So this was the mistake, and we fixed it. And now it asks if we want to install, and we say yes, and we need to set up the admin password. So I'll go to my trusty copy paste source, and I will specify the password for the sake of uniformity. And if everything works well, then in a few minutes, I will have this thing installed. And let's skip directly to this part. Okay, and there was another mistake in my file. And the mistake was that I specified that in JSON config JSON that there is a certificate where there is no certificate to use on the Excel database. So now we are at a failed state, and I need to redo all of the steps based on snapshots that I created so far. Let me just check if worker is impacted by now. Probably it's not. So let's see. LL special PT. There's Kubernetes here? No. Okay, so I need to revert NFS, master, and unfortunately the database, the PostgreSQL. So we go snapshot, revert to latest snapshot, master, and I need to copy some commands from master before I do that. So let's go directly to the next installation. Okay, and literally 3 minutes later, we are back on track, and this time with a modified JSON file. So let's see all of those nice things. We say yes, and then we need to specify our trusty password just once more. And there it goes to install. So let's see the result of that. And it failed again, and this time it failed on some really weird stuff. So for example, it fails to connect to the IDM database, and I just try to wonder why. And when I examine the documentation, what I find is that in all examples, except for example number 2, which I used, it's actually not trying to go to CDF API server. It tries to go to CDF IDM DB and CDF IDM user. and which I needed to use. And it means that I need to change JSON once more and run the installation without reverting to snapshot. Let's give it a try. And this time, after half an hour of investigation, including some Kubernetes logs, because apparently we already have Kubernetes at this stage, I found that I made a typo in the CDF DB URL over here in the JDBC URL. And instead of CDF DB, I said DCF DB. And in order to find it, the installation log didn't really help, but I went to Kubernetes using Kubernetes tool and read the log for the failing pod, which specified the wrong URL, and then I found it out. So yeah, basically there is the lesson of today is that it works, but be very precise. And also I corrected the mistake that I made previously. The mistake was that I accidentally allowed to run load on master node, basically marking it as a worker and a master node, and I corrected this too in the JSON, in the config JSON file. So now, when all of those problems are sorted out, I can wait for the installation to continue. And there we go. It is done. Let's see what it says. Revision 1, shown beyond are the important URLs. So this is the app hub URL, or to install a suite using MicroFocus metadata and to access the CDF management portal. This is quite new. Let's see what all of those URLs mean in our new world. Let's see what this one says. So CDF management, I don't think I saw this for a while. So we go with admin and our trusty password over here. And okay, so we have the cluster, deployment, and application. So we did have this one for in the past. I don't think I saw it recently. Okay, so master, worker, what tags do they have? This one is worker, this one cannot be worker, local registry, dashboard, application, deployment. It's all good. So there's the deployment metadata. I think it was referring here, right? Oh, this is the metadata. We don't have the metadata, but we do have the app hub variation. So we will go with the app hub. Let's see. Maybe this is the app hub. Nope. Okay. Let's do this. So this is completely new, and this would be our way to deploy with the app hub a little bit later. But for now, what I need to do, I need to do kube stop on master and worker and NFS and PostgreSQL and snapshot all of them before I deploy the suite. And in the next video, we will be actually deploying the OpsBridge suite itself. So stay tuned for this one. It is coming up in a few minutes.